Hi guys, Vincent here and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be ranking all of the final regeneration stories of all the Doctors. Now, before we get into the video, if you do enjoy, please consider liking and subscribing, as that does really help me out. But let's get into it. First, we have the 10th Planet with William Hartnell. Could put that in good. I think 10th Planet is a very good, strong story. First introduction to the Cybermen. Obviously, also the first regeneration story. I mean, to be fair, it's more or less just a kind of standard story than, like, for most of the classic ones, they're more or less just standard stories, whereas in the new series, it's very much building up to it. But yeah, it's very good at the time and very scary. Fortunately, part 4's missing, which is sad, which obviously therefore means that you can't actually watch one long viewing of it because they've had to animate one of the parts. Overall, it's a really good regeneration story. Second, we have the War Games. Yeah, it's probably one of the best ones. I mean, I haven't watched it in a while, mainly because it's 10 parts, which is quite a long time to sit through, especially in one viewing. But certainly, if you watch it over multiple viewings, it's not too bad. But yeah, just the story, the Doctor, and the War Chief, it's just really good. And obviously, the introduction of the Time Lords and his whole regeneration, where he's basically on trial, is amazing. And then it obviously ripples into all of the first few seasons of Pertwee Zero, where he's stranded on Earth. That all his relation to the War Games and the Second Doctor. But yeah, it's quite sad to watch Jamie and Zoe leave, because I think they are his best companions, and I wished maybe he'd had one more season. But overall, very good final story. Then we have Planet of the Spiders. Planet of the Spiders, ironically, I think is one of his weakest stories. I think Pertwee probably, well, not only is my favourite Doctor, I think he has one of the most consistent series runs, with season 7 and 10 being two fantastic seasons, pretty much perfect. Season 8 and season 11 being really good, and then season 9 being the weakest because it has two kind of thuds in there. The Planet of Spiders in season 11 is probably one of Pertwee's weakest stories, which is sad considering he's had such a good run. I think there was a few issues with the fact that I think you were like, it would have been better if Unit had more to do in it. The Master, obviously, I know, fortunately, the Master had passed away, who played him, Roger Delgado, passed away by this point, and I believe originally it was supposed to be like a final battle between the Master and the Doctor, which would have been so much cooler to watch. But ultimately, I just feel like there was so much more they could have done to celebrate Pertwee's time as the Doctor with Unit, and maybe bring back Jo Grant in a more present way, where she was just kind of mentioned in a letter. It would have been so much nicer to watch that happen and unfold than what we got. Next, we have Logopolis. I really do actually quite enjoy Logopolis, although I said obviously that it's more of a story for 10th Planet, and the latest stuff with the new series, so Tennant and Matt Smith, those are where, the kind of building up to it kind of happens. In the Logopolis, they did it really well with the idea of this watcher watching on, and the Doctor and the Master's battle, and it works really well. I do enjoy it, and then obviously the reveal at the end that the Watcher is the Doctor, and that he's then helped the Doctor become David Peter Davison's Doctor. That's really cool. Also, obviously, the introduction of Anthony Ainley's Master, who is my favourite version of the Master. Yeah, really, really funny. He is very, he's a bit camp in a way, but he is a good Master, and he gets better with the times. But probably, to be fair, this is probably one of his best episodes, mainly because I find he's a bit wary during Peter Davison's series, I don't like him as much as Peter Davison, but with Tom Baker, him and Tom Baker had really good chemistry. Next, we have Caves of Androzani. Caves of Androzani is clearly one of the best stories from the classic run, and also one of the best, stories here in the Regeneration, to the point where I might just add a row above, just the red. Okay, let's not put it in black. There we go. Caves of Androzani, best story of all time best Regeneration story in my opinion at the moment. It's really fun. You kind of feel the stakes a lot. Jack is a really kind of creepy villain, and also it's just generally just like sure, you kind of assume Peter Davison would survive, but the whole way that they do it with him saving Perry, but then might not be able to survive, is quite heavy stuff. And also, most people die in it. Like, so many people get killed off at the end. Only really the Doctor and Perry survived the encounter, and he doesn't even really survive it properly. Next, we have Colin Baker, and unfortunately, Colin Baker's going in this other section I've made called Isn't In It, as technically Colin Baker, whilst regenerates in this story, at the very beginning of the story, he refused to film a regeneration scene, so it's just Sylvester McCoy in a wig. So, what I think, although I believe Colin Baker has an actual regeneration audio audio drama from Big Finish, technically he hasn't. His final story is The Ultimate Foe, just he doesn't regenerate in this. So I'm just gonna leave it there. Next, you have the movie, and the movie is going to go into awful, because although unlike Time in the Rani, where Colin Baker doesn't even make an appearance, it's just Sylvester McCoy in a wig quickly moves on to Sylvester McCoy being the Doctor for the episode. The movie does take a little bit more time with Sylvester McCoy before the regeneration. The movie itself isn't bad, but on a regeneration story, I can't put it next to Planet of the Spiders, because at least in Planet of the Spiders you're getting a Pertwee story with his regeneration, whereas Paul McGann is mostly in the movie. Sylvester McCoy barely appears in the movie. Afterwards, we have Paul McGann's regeneration, which is pretty good, to be fair. I quite enjoy it. It's quite short because it's only like a prequel to introduce you to John Hurt's Doctor during the 50th. However, overall, I think it's a real nice send off to him, considering for a long time we didn't really get much of a regeneration, and it was just going to be, well, he disappeared at one point, and then we got Christopher Eccleston. So it was nice that they actually gave him a proper send off. Next, we have Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways, really good 2-part finale. Christopher Eccleston is really good in this, and you can see how much the Time War has affected him. And the Emperor Dalek returning is really cool, especially how for a while we hadn't had any visual, bring back of the Emperor Dalek. Whereas I suppose as though now we have the Evil of the Daleks, which has the Emperor Dalek in, but obviously at the time we didn't. So it was really nice to see him, the Emperor Dalek again. Rose in this is good. It was a bit iffy how they kind of resolved it, but overall I thought it was okay. Next we have Journey's End. Yeah, it's not great. I don't think Journey's End is very good. It's not super duper awful as a story, but I just think David Tennant's as a Doctor kind of feels off colour in his final story. He just considering it's his final story, he's very mopey and whiny, and I feel like the Journey's End episode with all of his companions coming back is a nice send off, whereas the End of Time, this one, he's kind of he's got given a substitute companion in Wilfred Mott, who is very good, and don't get me wrong, but it would have been nicer, I think, if he had an actual companion that he'd been with for a few series rather than just the Wilfred Mott. Because although as much as I like Wilfred, he he shouldn't have really needed to be there. They could have had a proper companion for from a series point of view, or considering Donna was in it, I don't know. Just they could have. There was definitely ways they could have handled this one, or even just not have done this episode and let him regenerate at the end of time. Not in the end of time, in Journey's End. That would have. I think that would have worked better. Afterwards, we have the Time of the Doctor. Time of the Doctor is a bit meh. You've just come off the Day of the Doctor, and now we have this one, and it's a bit slow, and there's a lot of bits that are just confusing and don't really make sense. So yeah, basically the Doctor kind of goes to this church, and they're invaded by the Daleks, and then the Doctor goes to the planet Trenzalore, and then he just kind of chills there for 1,000 years or so, and it's just a bit like it's just like you watch the whole story, and then you get to Maximus Regeneration, which, mind you, is probably one of the best regenerations in the whole show. But you get there, and you're just kind of like, what has actually happened this whole time? At least with the classic ones, Caves of Androzani, the War Games, Legopolis, 10th Planet, Planet of Spiders. If you watched that episode and there was no regeneration scene at the end, sure, maybe a few things would have changed, but fundamentally there's still a story there. Even with End of Time and and with Twice Upon a Time, which we're about to see, and Bad Wolf Parting the Ways, if the Doctor didn't regenerate, sure, a few things would have been tweaked a little bit, but fundamentally there's still a story there. Whereas in Time of the Doctor, it just kind of more feels like one massive time of just waiting for him to die. That's all it feels like. Day of the Doctor feels like his final story, and in Time of the Doctor, it just feels a little bit like we've been watching him for an hour to finish. Now I know, obviously, I put this better than Planet of the Spiders, and at time it's mainly just because, whilst I have kind of critiqued this one quite badly, it is still quite fun to watch, and Matt Smith is a very good performance in it, better than David Tennant by quite a bit. And whilst I said Planet of Spiders is bad, I think is worse than Time of the Doctor. I think that's mainly just due to the fact that Time of the Doctor has a lot better heartfelt moments, whereas I think and the regeneration scene has kind of picked it up a bit, considering it's supposed to be a regeneration story. Last, because obviously Jodie Whittaker hasn't had a regeneration story as of yet, we have Twice Upon a Time. Yeah, Twice Upon a Time is okay. It's probably about there. No, actually, it's probably better than that. I'd say it's about there. Twice Upon a Time is really a really good story, actually. David Burnley is a little bit questionable in terms of being William Hartnell. In terms of portraying William Hartnell as a Doctor, in some cases I think they went a little too far with some of his dialogue. But overall, I think Capaldi is stellar in his performance. He's really funny and witty, but also he's quite serious when he needs to be. I liked the whole idea that the fact that the villain of the story wasn't exactly a villain, because it kind of felt like Capaldi was coming to terms with the whole story was just Capaldi, and then also Dave Bradley's William Hartnell's Doctor coming to terms with the fact that they will they're going to die and regenerate most likely. But yeah, it was really good, and it was, to be honest, the end of an era which started a new one, which I'm not particularly a big fan, and hopefully we'll be getting the finale of that era very soon. But yes, if you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, because it does really help me out. But yeah, see ya.